All right, so we'll start with a simple survey. Raise your hand if you have a smartphone or an iPad. Okay, keep your hand up. Raise your hand if you've ever, or bring your hand down if you've ever not put anything on it from the App Store or Google Play. Keep your hand up if you've ever installed an app. Okay, now, keep your hand, notice it's almost all of you, right? Now, keep your hand up if you know what those apps are saying and who they're saying it to. Do you know what the app is doing? And you've checked yourself? You've gone in, you've looked at the connection, so put your hand down. How many hands are up right now? So this tool that you use every day with phone apps that you all say that you have is doing stuff that you don't know what it's doing. Some people use it for banking, some people use it for health, some people use it for games. That's the games maybe not so much, but banking and health and some of the other stuff, that's pretty private information. Would you go to somebody you didn't meet on the street and give them your banking password? But you go to your smartphone and you give it your banking password, but you don't know who it's talking to. So that's the goal of my talk right now, is to talk about how do you find out what are the apps doing and which apps are spying on me? And how do I know whether or not I can trust an app? And should I even use it? I am Lai. I work with the Wicker Foundation with Nico. We're a nonprofit helping people like this. I'm helping with Roots. That's my email address, and that's my Wicker ID. And then after this presentation, if you want to see what apps are spying on you, come back to me over there, and I'll show you how to do this yourself. So let's start with a demo. I want to start with, say, a program called Charles Proxy. It's a man-in-the-middle proxy, and I will show you how to install this. You can also use other man-in-the-middle proxies. I'm sorry, I don't have the ability to do it here, but I have an iPad, and it's set up to use my proxy. And I just want to show you one app real quick to see what's the app saying. And I don't feel so good sometimes, so I have an app called WebMD. They're one of the most popular health apps out there. So let's see what WebMD says. So I'm going to open up WebMD. Well, right off the bat, just pushing the button, I already see, I know it's a little small, look at how many people WebMD is already just saying I turned on WebMD to. Now, some of those are WebMD, but I got scorecard research, media analytics, API tap stream. All those guys know right off the bat that I've just opened the app. I haven't even checked for anything, and they're already telling third parties that I maybe have a health condition. Now, we went in and took a look at the Kim Kardashian app just to see what that was doing. That's sending to 11 domains, 15 trackers, analyzers, or behavioral profiling things, and 11 domains for app content. And only, look at the percentages. Only half are using encrypted connections. Now, maybe Kim Kardashian isn't that big of a deal, but maybe that's not something you want people to know in the world, and it's sending it to all those people. Weight Watchers. Before even agreeing to the application agreement, you're already sending info to this place called 207.net. How many people on a diet want 207.net that you're on a diet? Or how often you open the app? Or how well you're keeping to that diet? Now, good apps, people keep asking me, what are good apps? Good apps is a strange concept because it depends on your definition of good. But one of the things that is really useful in the US is we have this law called COPPA, the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act. And by law, if your app targets people under a certain age, you have some privacy requirements by the government. You don't if you're an adult app like WebMD. So the children's apps generally are better because they have so many requirements. So it doesn't collect personal information, so there's nothing private to send, right? This is for the Smurf app. There's still bad actors, but generally if it's a kid's app, you're a little bit better off. Does that mean you should trust them? Up to you. What would I do? I would double check your kid's app and what it's sending before you let them play it. The couple different things, the change spanking app, some other things don't allow the SSL breaking. That doesn't necessarily mean it's stronger, but it's a little bit better. Uber, Tinder, these things are encrypted. Generally, if you pay for the app, they don't have the ads, and therefore there's less people they talk to. If the app is free, they have to make their money somehow. Nobody gives anything away for free in a commercial society unless they're a nonprofit, like Wicker Foundation. So If the app is paid for, generally they don't spend money also on developers to integrate third parties. Does that mean you should trust them? What would I do? Check. There's one way to know for sure. Always assume you're being watched. Assume apps are watching you and reporting to the third parties. Do not do anything in the app you don't want it to be used against you. Oftentimes people feel like, oh, I go to my doctor, that's safe. So if I go to my app, that's a medical app, that must be safe too. Wrong. There are laws that control what your doctor's allowed to do that do not control medical apps. And I can tell you more about that. But the apps are not your doctor. They are not covered by HIPAA. They are not required to have your privacy in mind. How did I do this? Or how do I browse securely online? There's a couple options. Commercial anonymizing VPNs and onion routing networks will protect your traffic from people in the middle, but don't protect your traffic from the people that they're talking to. So even if I had a Tor or a VPN running with my WebMD app, I still would have sent all of that information to all of those people. Just because your connection is encrypted does not mean that the person you're talking to can be trusted. Hard. There is no good solution. Why is there no good solution right now? Anybody know? How old are apps? Less than 10 years old. How long does it take legislation to go through Congress? Yes. So why do you think there's no laws that cover apps? Exactly. So who's responsible for protecting you if Congress can't do anything? And yourself. And you know what? Parents, close your ears. Don't trust your parents. Check for yourself. Yeah, you probably know more than your parents, though, right? So you're a special case because you're at DEF CON. How do you privately use mobile apps? It's currently nearly impossible to use them privately. You can use them encrypted, but it's almost impossible to figure out what's going on. And to protect yourself, the only way to know is to verify first. So before you give banking details, open up your banking app. Before you give medical details, open up the medical app. Don't just read the privacy policies, because the privacy policies are written by, anybody know who writes privacy policies? Lawyers. And what's the lawyer's job? Are they to protect you or to protect the company? And are they going to do it in a way that scares you or in a way that sounds good to you? So should you trust a privacy policy? No. Matter of fact, most of my experience is if the app doesn't have a privacy policy, they're generally better off because they can't afford to write a privacy policy, which means they generally can't afford to hire lawyers. It's the really big apps, the ones that have all the money, that have the really good privacy policies that sound really good, but in general are written in a way that have gigantic loopholes. So what is a proxy server? I got 5 minutes. I'll just go real quick. Proxy server is something that sits in the middle and repeats. So if I'm talking to you, I can talk direct, or I can tell him, hey, tell her I said this, and then he tells you, and then you tell him, and then he tells me. He, in that point, is acting as the proxy server. He's the one who's sitting in the middle. There's a couple different ways you can do proxy servers. You can have a laptop like mine, run a proxy server and connect to the internet, and then have your iPad connect to the app. You can also have a laptop run over two separate networks, bridge between two network connections. One really good way, parents, for you to do this is buy a $10 Wi-Fi dongle. Then you can have a Wi-Fi dongle there for the external network, a Wi-Fi for an internal network, and then you can capture traffic and see what your kids are doing. Kids, you didn't hear I said that. Or what your parents are doing. I want them to listen to my talk. All right, so there's one problem with proxy servers is that SSL is encrypted. You can't break it by default. How did I get it broken on WebMD? You have to install a certificate on your iPad that makes it think it's a root certificate, and then it can break it. It's a little bit complicated, but if you look at the documentation for your proxy server, you do it. And what are your options? There are lots of options out there. There's free ones like Man in the Middle. There's one called Fiddler, which is real popular on Windows. I like Charles Proxy on the Mac, even though it costs money, because it doesn't require a PhD to use. It's just click and point, and they've got really good instructions, and it's well worth the money. Totally up to you. I don't care which one you use, just use one. The way I set this up just now, I had a $10 Wi-Fi adapter. This is a different picture, but you get the picture. How to set it up, you download the proxy server to your computer, you make sure your network and your computer and your iPad are on the same network, go to Wi-Fi, you do some stuff, that's all there. When you install the root cert to break SSL connections. Your iPad, iPhone, whatever you're doing, is no longer secure. People have access to that root cert as well as you. So once you're done testing, remove the root cert off of your thing, and don't keep that root cert on when you go to public networks like DEF CON. So I'm going to have to reformat my iPad when I go home. Do this after testing. You've been warned. All right. Final. Assume you're being watched, and my recommendations, and that's me and my contact info. And I got 3 minutes for questions. Anybody? Yes. Good question. Google, how do you get around SSL pinning? It's not easy. And there are some sites that now are on, and why are those sites doing it? To stop exactly this. So it's complicated. It's not super easy. But for the majority of apps, they're not that complex. I mean, you saw what WebMD was doing, right? Those guys have a huge dev team. In 5 years, it'll be a different thing. But 5 years ago, this didn't even exist. There'll be different tools and there'll be different hacks. I bet you somebody at DEF CON can sit you down and in 5 minutes show you how to undo it. Other questions? Yes, sir. So there are different groups doing different things. Some really good ones are the EFF, one of our partners and sponsors. Thank you to the EFF. Also, the ACLU has some aspect in it. There's a group out of DC called EPIC, run by a guy named Mark Rodenberg, and he's really into it. There's a bunch of other ones as well. I can give you a list. And then there's some ones that I don't trust as much. Basically, so there's a group called Trustee, which has little logos that come on the page, but they're paid for by the companies. So you have to, when you're evaluating a group to figure out where to donate your time or your money to, figure out where the money comes from that drives the group, and then decide whether or not you think their interests are aligned with yours. If their money is coming from the people who they are watching, you need to, in my mind, question that. If the money is coming from private donations, it's there. But really, it's all about the individuals. So look at what they've written online, look at what they've published, look at who they are, look at their backgrounds, go to the contact list. That's the best way to go. And also ask your network. You've got a great network of people, right? I know a number of individuals. Nico knows probably the whole world of individuals. So there's lots of people to ask. I got 30 seconds. Any other questions? Thank you very much.